going to be talking about trauma and how it shows up in motherhood and how sometimes we are the ones doing the harm. We can continue the cycle of trauma in our family, but we also have the amazing, amazing power of being able to self and co regulate, repair, and create emotional safety and break the cycle of trauma. And I am here with Danik today, and we are going to be sharing a bit of our personal stories around our postpartum experiences and some of the things that we have lived, some of the things that we have strived to change. And we're also going to be busting a little bit of some myths about what people believe about trauma or motherhood and the way that we kind of hold ourselves to the standard that can be kind of impossible.
Thank you for having me.
So welcome, welcome. I was so excited to have you on the podcast like months ago, but then just this weekend when you posted about your family pictures and how it was like 15 minutes was just like the maximum that your family could handle. It really resonated with me because being a neurodiverse family ourselves, we struggle with some of these expectations around Christmas that are just kind of really hard to maintain every year. And like family photos is one of them. And as I shared with you this weekend, like this year is a selfie. That's like that is the effort that I'm putting into that particular pressure in motherhood. Because yeah, there's this myth, I think, that if we are perfect, then we won't cause harm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's one of the myths that I hear the most, and it's not something that we consciously necessarily have in our brain, like in our logical brain. It's something we hold subconsciously, right? After going through many, many things. The message that we kind of create for ourselves is, well, if I do things the right way, then I will prevent any harm from happening. If I love my kids fiercely, nothing wrong will ever happen, and that will be enough for me to be the best mom. So yeah, but that's not necessarily always the case.
No. Humans are
Yeah,
complicated. And
absolutely.
I know for myself in my own postpartum experience with my first, not knowing that I had undiagnosed ADHD, I actually didn't even screen on the EPDS screening.
No way.
They were like, well, you're probably fine. You're high functioning, you've got it all, you check all the boxes, you feel pretty prepared when you come in here, et cetera, et cetera. But what I realized later, after we were experiencing some challenges with my oldest, was that I know in my heart that I did not respond to him in the ways that he needed in those first months of his life. And I know that I caused some harm in that and impacted his nervous system.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah. And it's that thing where when we have awareness of what can happen, of our power to repair, to give appropriate, time, affection, and just validation to our children. There's that one side, but also the other side where, as humans, it is a human experience to deal with trauma, relational trauma, big events, or more like the chronic things that keep going on, which, as postpartum moms, I think we are probably most at risk of developing or creating, right? So, like for myself, when I had my first, I didn't screen on the postpartum depression screening either. It was as if I could read through the questions.
Oh,
And I was like,
totally.
no, I'm not going to answer what I really think. Yeah. And I know that I was dealing with quite severe postpartum anxiety. And for myself, it was like, okay, I need to be everything for this child because I need to do the exact opposite as what my mom did. So, in order for me to break the generational trauma, in order for me to not do as my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother, I need to do the exact opposite, which means I need to be everything, do everything, and just, have these extreme high standards for myself that is quite impossible to achieve. So that's where my mindset was. And then he was born in winter, right? So I always say, like, oh my gosh, he was born with a cold. He was born with a cold. I kid you not. He was always snoring here and there. So, but I didn't know what it was. I'm a summer baby. My brother's a summer baby. My mom has no experience with winter babies, right, in Canada. So then he had a cold, and I was like, okay, well, whatever, he's fine and he's feeding and it's okay. But then as time went on, he developed bronchiolitis, and I brought him to the hospital, and the nurses, they suctioned out his mucus and all. And that was a really traumatizing thing to witness, just even for myself, because you're looking at this baby and in his little body and you can see the distress. Trauma is when something happens or does not happen where your body's just, it's beyond its capacity to cope. Well, I could see clearly that my little 1-month-old was out of his capacity to cope, right? But as myself, right? Even if I was an adult looking at that, it was beyond my ability. I think I probably dissociated even that moment. Like my brain was like, no, let's check off. Let's just completely check off and come back online when it's safe. So that's definitely what happened. But then that message, or that core belief, I should say, where I have to do exactly the opposite as my mom, kind of came back in my survival mode, making me think that, okay, I need to be saving my baby's life. He was fine, by the way, but in my mind, I had to save his life. So I had to suction his nose at every chance I got. If I heard a little snoring here and there, a little sniffles, I was going in there with the HydraSense, the push thingy. And then I was just getting out that mucus inside his nose, repeating the exact situation he had been through, the exact experience. So what happens over time is that the body accumulates this trauma, right? And then he ends up, with teeth at some point. We need to brush his teeth. He wasn't even a year old. I was trying to brush his teeth, and I saw how we could not even approach his face. He would go into like full on bacon mode, like, no, can't do it. It was beyond his ability to cope. And I was like, oh my gosh, how come? Like, is he just hyperactive and not wanting to cooperate? Is that just like a baby thing? But no, later on with my daughter, I saw how different that situation was. But with my son, I was able to see, like, okay, there's probably some trauma there. And then I realized, like, wow, even if I was well intentioned, even if I had the best intentions in the world, I still caused some harm, which then I had a light bulb moment where I realized, like, okay, down the road, there's some things that I will do where I'm thinking I have full 100% good intentions, and it could probably still cause harm. So let's not put ourselves in positions where we're looking at these high standards we want to achieve for ourselves and be in a mindset of failure all the time. Let's just look at the reality for what it is. We have the power for both. So let's just build awareness and let's focus on repairing, because repairing needs to come before perfection. Because when we focus on perfection, we will miss all of those little things that end up becoming big things. Yeah,
Well, I
that's
love what you just said about the repair has to come before perfection. That's really profound. So let's just like think for a minute. from the listener's perspective, if they're listening right now and they are like having a huge light bulb moment that may accompany some like, some positive reflection, but maybe shame voices inside, how does one move from, okay, I know that I've probably done some harm, in like a healthy way of kind of accepting and moving through those pieces and not going in the other direction of, I must perfect everything. I must show up. I must love fiercely. I must lose myself.
The thing is that we're kind of the first generation to have awareness about it all. So it's really tough to do something new and break patterns when we don't necessarily have examples or models of what to do. We weren't necessarily modeled what a healthy repair looks like. We kind of have to create it and play it by ear and ask for feedback, see how it goes. So what I always recommend, and depending on the setting, let's say this is a client that I'm seeing for therapy, we would for sure look at, out of curiosity and non-judgment, look at those themes that are present in our lives. So let's say, for example, if the theme of I need to be perfect is very much present in every aspect of present day life, well, that means there's something that happened for us to have created that theme or to get that message, right? We weren't born thinking I need to be perfect. We learned this. Part of my role is to really look at, okay, why has this theme emerged in your life in the first place? And let's process the significant traumas that have contributed to this so that at least we give the brain the chance to digest. We are eliminating what we don't need, and we are keeping our strengths, and we are kind of focusing on that. So that's one part. But then also the coaching aspect into like, okay, what does it look like to even repair? I don't even know. First, like it's important to recognize that we will be imperfect at this and it's okay. We need to try something because even if we try something and it's not perfect, at least we tried, right? And our children will energetically feel that we're trying, right? They will sense it, that maybe what we said wasn't exactly perfect, but at least we are trying. And to keep trying, keep it going, right? And not lose hope about that. So sometimes what happens with perfectionism is that we want to avoid because it's like, okay, it's like if I'm not
I
going
can
to
fix this.
Yes, yes, yes. If I'm not going to into this perfectly and have it right the first time, then I'm not even going to try. But our kids need us to try because they need to see us trying. By trying and being imperfect, we're giving them the permission to be imperfect. We're modeling what it is to be imperfect, but to still be an emotionally safe parent because both can exist. The first step is really to like have awareness like, okay, I said or I did X thing, and now I'm clearly seeing that this is having a negative effect on my child. One thing I always tell the moms I see is that, as for adults, sometimes children are not ready to hear, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I just said this. I'm sorry. Sometimes it's okay to just let some time go, maybe a couple minutes, maybe a couple hours. It depends on your child and their needs. And if they need time to, be alone, process, or they need time to co-regulate with you first and just be with you and borrow from your calm so that they become calm. So that's kind of the first thing is to have awareness of it. And yes, do apologize, but also seek the feedback. Like, hey, I see that when I said or I did X thing, you reacted in X way. And to me, that sounds like that wasn't okay what I did. What do you think about that? And asking open-ended questions, being okay with receiving the criticism. But in order to do that, for someone who maybe was criticized so much in their life growing up, this is huge and it can be potentially re-triggering. So that's why it's so important, the trauma processing component of it, because we can end up being triggered while we're trying to repair.
Yes. Yes. The two things can be true, right?
Yeah.
Like it can be really hard to receive feedback from anybody, but particularly your children when they are old enough to give you feedback. It takes a lot of emotional regulation skills and
Mhm.
um, like emotional intelligence in order to be able to not dissociate in that moment, to not just be like, okay, well, I'm going through the motions, I'm following the script that
Yeah.
I saw on social media and that
Yeah.
it said I should do, but I'm not seeing any results from it, or I can't sit in the presence of it, I can't sit in the discomfort of it, because that means that I suck, I'm not good enough, and my kids are probably going to end up in therapy just like me.
Absolutely. Absolutely 100%. And it's that thing where if we go into parenthood with this mindset of, you know what, maybe my kids will end up in therapy because of me, but at least I know that if they are in therapy because of me, there will be moments in their process, in their therapeutic process, where they will be able to recognize how I tried and how I am always open to having conversations and that I will always validate
Mhm.
and be there for them. Because at the end of the day, we are always sending messages, whether it be verbal or very unconscious. We're sending messages. We're either telling our kids we are open to having conversations, we are open to having them come to us when something is wrong, even if we are in the wrong, or we're sending the message that their feedback is not welcome. We are not able to validate, and they will not have that from us. So, what's important here is that we can't hold ourselves again to this impossible standard of I need to be this validating, co regulating, end all and be all parent all the time. If we can be a validating, emotionally mature parent, yeah, we mess up, we repair, and we model how an imperfect parent is also an emotionally safe parent, then at least this gives our children the opportunity to see, like, okay, this is what a parent that messes up and then tries to repair looks like, where we didn't, for the majority of us, anyways, we didn't even get that.
And I think something important to note in that we didn't get it, and something that I walk through my clients through a lot, is that they did the best they could with what they had. And if they had different tools, maybe they would have done different things or showed up differently to that trauma or that parenting or that
Mhm.
bully at school.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that, you know, people can do well if they can, meaning if they
Mhm.
have the resources, if they have the information that is readily available. I mean, this is all new, having all this new information just at our fingertips. This is very, very new. So of course, people could not always do the best.
Mm.
And we can't either, right? This is absolutely a very high standard. And also, even if we know that our parents could, or caregivers, those people who raised us,
Mhm.
even if we know that they truly did the best they could with what they had, it can also mean that we still have trauma to process and our kids could too,
Mhm.
right? Just like my poor son we had to kind of desensitize his face in order to be able to brush his teeth. Even if I was a mom in the 21st century and I had all the information at my fingertips, and I'm a therapist,
Yes.
I still cause trauma inside his little body. So I was like, okay, how do I repair? I can't have a conversation with him. He's not even one yet. How do we do that? So I tried to desensitize his face, do massages, and then I was able to brush his teeth, right? But it's this ability to be able to pause and then backtrack, ask for feedback, repair, right? When children, doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter if you're an adult, if you're a minor, if you feel your parent is truly looking to validate and seek feedback, then the potential for healing is just that much bigger
Mm.
than when we feel that chronically over time, there was no room for validation. There was no room for feedback at all. But if we're able to feel in our body and even just energetically, we're not even, talking about spoken words here, but just this openness, if we can feel that as children chronically over time, then this will cause the opposite of a trauma, right? It's the trust that builds. So yeah, there's many, many components to this.
Mhm. And it's complicated and it's layered and it's
Mhm.
unique to everyone's situation and the harm that I know that I have caused in my relationships, in my parenting, in my child rearing, even the way that I talk to myself, we are all capable of, causing harm, and we are all capable of repairing not only our relationships with others, but our relationships with self. And I think it's really key to visit those places that are uncomfortable and that get activated and that our body is sending us information that we might not know what to do with. But sitting in that contemplative kind of space can bring about so much awareness to those patterns, or awareness to the things that we might be doing on autopilot that we believe are the best intention or the best response, and that are key. Coming from two therapists, we're a little bit biased, but I think it's really important for people to seek the support that they need. And when resources or money or time or things are not as accessible, I think it's important to even still reach out to people, because they might have resources that might still help, even if the actual therapeutic relationship or the one-on-one cost of therapy can't be actualized in your reality.
Yeah, seeking the safe people.
Mhm.
Because sometimes in relationships, we often just, bring our childhood stuff, our own stuff into the relationship, and then there's just triggers. So, yeah, find your safe person. It could be your partner, maybe not, and that's okay. Find a safe person. If you're able to confide in them, I'm really feeling my heart beating way too fast when I try to do X thing or when X thing happens. What do you think about that? And you know in your gut that this person will be open, will accept what you have to share, and will just give you this vibe of love, if you will,
Yeah.
of trust, of secure attachment, really.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's definitely one way to go about this, finding this one secure person.
I want to close with the hard but gentle truth that all children will be emotionally harmed at some point. We will show up too much, we will show up too little, we will make a mistake, we will misjudge the situation, Um, and it's important to recognize and act on those moments to create safety within yourself and safety within others, and to put put the shame or the blame just like in a container and just put it on the shelf for a minute and just feel the feelings, but don't get stuck in them, and
Mhm, mhm.
learn how to have those skills of repair or self and co-regulation, because aiming for perfectionism, which we just don't have time for this. I mean, perfect people have written books on this. They have done
Right,
research studies. There's so many
right,
things, but
right.
perfectionism is a trauma response in itself. And
Absolutely.
so staying in that space or striving for that is putting so much pressure on your body. It's like
Mhm.
so much pressure on your body.
And the people around you too.
Mhm.
Even if you want to do the exact opposite and your intentions are so pure and good, right? It's this thing that I hear often, that moms really don't want to repeat the past.
Mhm.
They want to focus on what they can do better, but always within this component of, I need to build a secure attachment. And this idea that secure attachment is built through, those magical moments, through what we can do with our family, where everything is seemingly perfect, where we never do any, we never have any mess ups, like
Mhm.
everything's all good. But that's not the case. Secure attachment will build over time, always. It's this thing that is continuous. So even if you do make a mistake, doesn't mean that the relationship will be, broken and the attachment will be broken. It's actually a good thing when your child can witness you mess up and then repair, because that's an opportunity to not only learn, but to build the trust and continue creating this bond and this secure attachment that you have with your children.
I think that's a really great point to end on in terms of the realities of secure attachment. And I think for anyone listening, I'm going to drop a couple of resources that I found really helpful to kind of debunk some of the interesting information out in the world about attachment and about attachment parenting and all of the things that it has become, because it has strayed far from its original
Yes.
roots. Its original roots are much less pressurous and a lot more grace and a lot more giving in the lifespan of a relationship. And it's not all just what happens in those first 3 hours, 3 days, 3 months, or 3 years. It is a relationship that is formed over time. And to create security, you have to move through unsafe or uncomfortable moments in order to know and to create security and safety.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'm going to drop all of the resources and links below. And we will see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much.